So this morning's message, we continue to look at the Sermon on the Mount. I hope you are allowing God to transform you by but by yielding to the Holy Spirit's work in you to become more like Jesus. How many of you would agree that we live in a divided country? And it's getting more and more divided. And some of you are angry because the America you grew up with seems to be going away. And there's a new kind of America. And there might be something in you that wants to retaliate, to do something crazy, to, display your hostilities toward these things. But let me just say this to you. The context in which the Sermon on the Mount was written, well, it makes America look like the most peaceful and united country by comparison. Because the nation that Jesus was talking to, his disciples on that mountain that day, were living under Roman occupation. It would be like the Russians moved in and took over everything. And we had to ask them permission to blow our noses. And we were under total dominance. And we were under an ideology that none of us agreed with. And they were pagans beyond pagans. And they are now in God's holy land. And they're doing whatever they want. Let me ask you this. Would that cause you to go like, we got to get together and do something? Right? Well, that's exactly the climate. And so this morning I want to talk about the laws of non-retaliation. Because this is really big in God's kingdom. I could have given it the subtitle, Love Always Wins Over Evil. It always does. So we're angry, we're frustrated, but the question is, what are the weapons of our warfare? How do we fight against injustices? So the first point here is Jesus deals with the human desire for justification or justice through retaliation. That's where he's going to go with this. He says, you've heard it said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. You've heard that said. Now, it's important to say that Jesus is quoting the Bible here. He's quoting Exodus 21. He's also quoting Deuteronomy 19. The Bible clearly says that there is a justice that God requires, and it is an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. Now, why is Jesus dealing with his disciples personally? We'll get to that in a minute. This, by the way, is your sixth antithesis, and this one here is the fifth one, and it's retaliation. So he's going to go against their feelings of retaliation. There's a climate of retaliation, and Jesus is going to say, you've heard it said this, but I'm going to tell you something entirely different. Now, this is not to contradict a rabbinical school like the other antithesis were, because every Jew, including the rabbis, knew that this eye for an eye and tooth for a tooth was something done in civil court. In other words, you would go to court and the punishment fit the crime. That's the way God's civil court would operate under the judges. It was never meant to be a personal thing where you as a person could take somebody's eye if they took yours or their tooth. So everybody knew it, every rabbi knew it, but here's why Jesus told his disciples this. Because there was a climate in Israel that can only be described as a zealot mindset. How many people have heard of the zealots in the Bible? Remember Barabbas? He was a zealot. He was let go because he would actually fight against Rome where Jesus did nothing. And what does it mean to be a zealot? It means that you have a zeal for righteousness. And so because you have a zeal for righteousness, there is a political nationalism. You are going to rise up and defend your nation. And especially for the Jews, because they believed that God had given them this nation. So they believed that God alone was king, and they believed that this Roman rule was a total blasphemy. So sure, we can fight against the Romans, because they are being blasphemous by taking over our land. So therefore, violence against oppression was considered righteous. How many people have heard this even taught in evangelical churches today? This is out there because it follows this idea that God is most concerned about a national thing. It needs to be defended. They all believe that it was God's will for Israel to be restored. And the role models for this zeal for righteousness were King David, who went up against God's enemies, And especially they liked Elijah, because Elijah would bring down fire from heaven and destroy all of God's enemies. So this was the worldview that was so strongly held and supported by the Jews of the day that the entire nation is going to be destroyed in 70 AD, just a handful of years after Jesus is crucified. Why? Because they retaliated against the Romans. And when you retaliate against the Roman Empire, you lose. And they lost. They lost their nation. They lost their temple. They lost everything because they could not retaliate against their enemies. How deep was this burning desire? If you remember Jesus' disciples, John and James, who were called the sons of thunder because they were part of this zealot community, that when Jesus makes them his disciples, there's one point where they're in Samaria and the Samaritans aren't paying attention, aren't listening, and John or James, one of them says this, "Lord, wilt thou command fire to come down from heaven and consume, even as Elias did?" Yeah, let's burn them up. They're not listening. Do you remember what Jesus said to this? Well, first of all, he turns to them and he rebukes them and he says this, "You do not know the manner of spirit you're in." This is not God's spirit. God's spirit is not one of retaliation against enemies. This is a human spirit. It may even be a demonic spirit, but it's not God's spirit. So here's what he says. "For the Son of Man has come not to destroy man's life, but" what? To save them. Any ideology, any theology that requires us to destroy our enemies is not coming from heaven. It is a human or even demonic, but our desire as God's church, as his representative, is to save life. Do we save the life of our enemies? We better. Should we pray for the salvation of people we disagree with? We better. So here is Jesus' position on retaliation against evil, and it is not something you're going to like. You've probably read it before, but I'm going to go into greater detail. He says, "I'm going to say to you, do not resist the one who is evil." Think about this a second. Somebody's evil, they come at you, don't resist them. Lie down. Is that the American spirit? No, it's not the American spirit. Is it the human spirit? No, it's not the human spirit. Is it the Holy Spirit? Yeah. You're going to require a lot of the Holy Spirit to do these things. And let me tell you, Jesus goes into 4 different examples, so you won't misunderstand what he's trying to say about resisting evil. And all of these things deal with, listen to me, an assault on human dignity and an assault and violation of justice. Evil is coming at us 100 miles an hour and it wants to take something from us. When he talks about turning the other cheek, you're going to see it. It talks about dignity. There's something, an evil force wanting to take away your dignity. Then evil comes at us, wants to take away our possessions. Then evil comes at us and wants to take away our freedom. Then evil comes against us and wants to take against. I'm going to talk about our prerogative because it needs a little explanation in the light of what Jesus is doing here. This is all about what Paul taught in Romans. Believers, never avenge yourself. But who are we to leave room for? The wrath of God. You see, all these principles are absolutely crazy if there's not a God in heaven. This is totally the wrong thing to do, to let evil be evil if there's not a God in heaven. If it wasn't written that vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord. How many people know God knows how to repay evil? Including the evil that is done to you personally. So you have a choice. You can retaliate against it, or you can let your good shepherd. See, Jesus says, I am your shepherd. You're not going to want for anything. Therefore, you don't have to fear evil. I love this passage in Psalm 23 because it tells us not to fear any evil. Why? Listen to this verse and understand what it means. It says, why don't we fear evil? For you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. What is a rod and staff in the arms of Jesus? See the wolves over there? Who do you think he's protecting us against? Right over there. If he's the shepherd and he's got a staff and he's got a stick, they're not going to get us. Let him be the shepherd, and you don't have to want for anything. These 4 areas that are being spoke about, dignity being removed from you, your possessions being removed from you, your freedoms being removed from you, your provocations being, you don't have to fear any of these things because man cannot take from you what only God can give. What do I mean by that? We'll see. We don't fear any evil because no man can take from us things that only God can give us. Who gives us our dignity? I said, who gives us our dignity? If the whole world hates you, you're not hated by heaven. So let's look at these things because that's where Jesus is going. He's talking about, first of all, evil has come to take away your dignity. How are you going to respond to it? And it's all about the slap. He says, if anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to him also the other. Now, most people are right-handed. Who can I slap here? Jason? I'm not going to try to slap anybody. So just imagine, that's his left cheek right there, right? Right? If I'm going to slap somebody on their right cheek, that's what it says, right cheek, and I'm a right-handed person, what do I have to do? Backhand them. And that's exactly what Jesus is talking about. If you're gonna get them on this cheek, you're gonna have to backhand them. And that was a clear and common way of insulting somebody. The only thing I can say to this is that this backhanded slap was so bad that there was a different penalty. If somebody slapped you in the face, that was one penalty. If they backhanded you, it was twice the penalty. And it's not talking about physical, like violence toward you. It's talking about disrespect toward you. I've heard idiot atheists who knew nothing of this principle. Oh, well, Christians are sadomasochists because if you slap them on one side, they're called to turn the other cheek. Well, that's just a form of sadomasochism. This wasn't a painful thing. This was a disrespectful thing. And I started thinking, what is equivalent today to the backhanded slap? And because I watch a lot of football, I came up with this as the equivalent of backhanded slap. By the way, let me just cover this real quickly. It's the ultimate sign of disrespect. It's related to total contempt for a person. There's double penalty. And what would be the modern equivalent? If you watch a lot of football, this. You can't do that to another man. Hey, these guys are killing each other on the football field. That's perfectly fine. Slamming into each other, oh, that's okay. But you don't do that. Because you ever see when these two guys are drawing back and forth, a little trash talking going on, and one guy goes ballistic, and everybody's like, why is he going so crazy? I mean, he's throwing punches, and everybody's like, that's just nuts. Why is he doing this? He's going to get thrown out of the game. And then you find out later, he did it because the guy spit on him. And what do we all do? Oh, well, I get it now. Oh, he spit on. Well, okay, now I understand it. Nobody does that. I mean, anything's justifiable if you get spit on. That's what Jesus is talking about. The backhand. Somebody totally, completely disrespects you, insults you, treats you with some contempt. Remember Jesus, he went through all of this. And he says to us, listen, the path that I took was one that led to death on a cross, led to total, complete humiliation, led to persecution, spitting on me, total disrespect for me. And unless you pick up your cross, you can't follow. What is Jesus trying to tell us? If you're a Christian, you're going to get disrespected. If you're a Christian, you're going to get persecuted. Listen to what Jesus did. He gave his back to those who strike. He gave his cheek to those who pulled out the beard. He hid not his face from disgrace. He took it. He took it without retaliation. And believe me, Jesus said he had a legion of angels. He could have retaliated. But he didn't. But he's telling you, you're going to pick up that cross, right? You're going to act like this, right? You're going to be like me, right? Because if you can't do this, don't come. If you want to be human about your emotion, don't come. Because let me just tell you, he was despised, he was rejected, he was a man of sorrow, he was acquainted with grief. Men hid their faces from him. He was despised, and they esteemed him not. If you're looking for esteem in this world, don't become a true believer. Jesus was treated with total and complete contempt. But, as we see, he suffered, but he didn't threaten. He continued to trust himself to who? To him who judges rightly. In other words, he said, Father, you will do what is right to vindicate. He was reviled, but he did not revile in return. All of this is part of Jesus. And then he tells us, a servant is not greater than his master. If they persecuted me, they're going to persecute you too. Get ready. Does anybody know what this is? This is the life of a dyslexic. That's the way I see paper. That's the way I see images sometimes. A little hard to read. And sometimes I ask God, because I feel every Sunday morning I get up here to publicly embarrass myself by trying to read when I can't really read the letters very well. And I sometimes say to God, it'd be better if you called somebody smarter, more intelligent. And God says, I don't need you or anybody. You just go and be obedient. Last week, I'm using this as an example. Last week, I put up a slide. I don't know how many of you caught it, in which I spelled vowels entirely wrong. See, oats and vows should be rare. My wife pointed this out to me, after this message, because she loves me. And I thought about our visitors who were here. I thought about them going home in the car and going, I'm not. Oats and vows, did you see that? Oats and vows? He's the pastor, oats and vows? I can't sit under that kind of stuff. Dyslexics, unite. Yeah. I try my best. It's not a matter of not trying. I really try. I'm putting my messages together like 15 minutes before the sermon because God is showing me new things, so sometimes I get it wrong. But listen, I thought to myself, my goodness me, any persecution I would get because of a weakness, any insults, any contempt that would be directed to me, do I have any idea what the Apostle Paul went through? What did the Apostle Paul do before he was saved? He murdered Christians. He murdered Christians. How would you like to stand up here where everywhere you go, everybody's whispering, hey, I don't want to listen to him. He's a murderer. Not only a murderer, he murdered Christians. And Paul got used to it. He said this, I have become content with my weakness, with insults, with hardships, with persecution, with calamity, because I know that when I'm at my weakest, then he is at his strongest. Paul understood how God could take the evils and the revilings and turn it around. So he said, when revile, we bless. When persecuted, we endure. When slander, we entreat. And then he goes on to even say this, we have become and still are like the scum of the world, a refuge of all things. I am treated like the scum of the earth, like a refuge, like garbage in all things. Jesus is saying, no. You take whatever contempt, whatever despising they do, you take that slap and you don't retaliate in any way. Next point he talks about is when evil comes to take away your possessions. How many people have had this happen? Probably not many. Evil comes. Jesus says this, if anyone would sue you and take your tunic. Anybody here ever been sued? Oh, good. No one has ever been sued. You know what they're coming for when they sue you? Your money. Whether it's the lawyer you pay for, whatever. I've seen good, just gentle Christians go ballistic when somebody tried to take their money. I knew one Christian who, some kids went over and stole some stuff out of his house. And instead of calling the cops, he went to that person's house with a gun. No one's going to take my stuff. Not on my watch. And you watch a nice, gentle Christian become John Wayne in the Wild West. Or maybe Bad Bart, I don't know. You ain't going to take my money. I'm going to fight you. You're going to lose. Nobody mess with my money. I'm sorry, I don't know why I went into that accent for it. Usually I do the dumbed down South guy. I don't know what was happening there. I don't know what's going on here. If anyone would sue you and take your tunic, what? This was a common practice. You went to law, you would give your tunic up as a form of covering whatever the offense was. But there was a law that said that nobody, under any conditions, they could take your tunic, but they couldn't take your cloak as a pawn. Nobody would take your cloak. Why? Because your inner garment, you had many of them. You only had one, and by the way, a cloak is like a coat. You could never take anybody's jacket, because a jacket was what they used at night to keep warm. And Jesus says, go ahead, give them the jacket. They want the tunic, give them a jacket. Give them everything. So you sleep naked. What in the world is going on here? Evil has come to take away my possessions, and God says, instead of me kind of fighting back or coming against them or getting my lawyer and we're going to go to battle and all, he tells me, just double up on the good. What in the name of? So they want one possession. I give them twice as many possessions. This is what you're telling me. This is the good idea. It would be like that guy I was telling about. Instead of when they came and stole, he would take some of his other possessions and give them. Instead of bringing a gun, he would have brought more possessions and given to them. What's going on here? Well, Jesus is talking about how good ultimately defeats evil. And what he's really talking about here, and it's very subtle, he's talking about turning the tables. And you go, how? You'll see it. Imagine, you go to court for just the inner tunic, and now the guy gives you everything, and he's standing there, bare-chested, in the middle. What do you think the people are thinking of that guy right there? The guy walking away with his back. What do you think they think about him? It ain't good. And what do they think about this guy? Wow, yeah, he looks pretty good. I wasn't going to tell this story. I really wasn't. But I have to tell it because it just fits so incredibly perfectly. I was involved in broadcasting when I was in my 20s, and I talked to the program directors of all the stations I worked for. They were secular stations, and letting me on Sunday morning play any type of music and say anything I wanted. And so they gave me Sunday mornings to do that. So one of the little segments we would do is we would go to a mall and we'd ask questions. Questions like, if you could ask God one question, what would you ask him? Get a whole variety of opinions. Might open up a door to evangelize. Anyway, we were doing this outside of a college town, and I wasn't aware it was a college town. So we came across a guy who looked like a professor, because he was a professor. And we asked, hey, you could ask God one question, what would you ask him? He just looked right at us and said, I don't believe in God. Okay, well, that's your prerogative, I guess. Then he says this to us. He says, all Christians are hypocrites. And my buddy and I look at him, well, we're not hypocrites. We're here in the mall. We're trying to do it. He goes, I'll prove it to you. All right. He goes, what does the Bible say? It's got a verse in there about if anybody asks you for your shirt, you're to give it a shirt. Ask for your coat, you're to give it to them. I don't know Christians to do that. We go, what are we? We're like in high school, a little above high school. We're like in our 20s. We're actually out of high school. Hey, so he says to us, give me your jacket. So he's got his back in the corner, doesn't he, a little bit? A little chess match here. He's talking about hypocrisy. So I just take off my jacket and I give it to him. He goes, now your shirt. It's winter. I got nothing on underneath my shirt. But he's kind of got us. So I give my shirt. He goes, now your shoes. The Bible doesn't say anything about shoes, but whatever, I'll give him my shoes. I've gone this far. So now I'm standing there in the middle of winter in a mall, no shirt, bare-chested, no shoes. And then he says, now the pants. And I said, listen, I can't violate Scripture with other Scriptures. There's a Scripture that talks about modesty. I'm not going to take off my pants. So at that point, my best friend, who's standing right next to me, hands him my $150 Walkman that has a microphone. He hands it to him. He says, take this instead. And I just look at him like, oh, that was real sacrificial. Thank you. He didn't know I had a Walkman. Thank you for giving away my Walkman. Anyway, make a long story short. At this point, the mall security notices there's a bare-chested man in the middle of winter standing in the mall. So he starts walking over. And what does this brave professor do? Takes all of my stuff. And by the way, my wallet is in my jacket. He walks away. Just walks away. Doesn't want to explain this to the security guard, I guess. And guess what? We could have told the security guard, hey, that guy, he just took our stuff. But that would sort of defeat the purpose, wouldn't it? So I remember going back to the car in winter, and this is amazing. This to me was one of the most amazing things. I opened the back door, and this was my friend's car, and on his back seat, he had a shirt folded with shoes on top of it. And I believe there was also a jacket. And I say to him, I said, oh. He goes, I don't even know how that got there. I don't remember putting it there. So I put on the shirt, put on the shoes. I remember thinking, God, yeah, that was good. That was you trying to get across to him this point. So I get home and have to explain this to my mother, because by that time I had to give back the shirt and the shoes. And my mother says, what happened? And I explained it to her, and she says, you know, son, I think you need help. She goes to my dad, and my dad says, yeah, that kid is gay. See, my dad was a Christian. He didn't defend me. She even calls him my best friend, Garth, who gave my stuff away. And Garth says, oh, Mrs. Seppi, I would never do anything like that. So I look like the Sappy Sape. This was back then. I'm not going to get into that. Anyway, the guy, about a week later, sends me back all my stuff with a little note thanking me and inviting me to dinner. Now, I'm now in the age of probably the guy was. And I thought to myself just recently, when that guy came home with all my stuff, and his wife asked him why he had all that stuff, and he explained to his wife what he did, she probably looked at him like, you jerk. You jerk. You send that all back to him. And not only send it back to him, invite him to dinner. There's a little turning of the tables going on here. When you give everybody what they want, they look like the bad guy. This looks like heaping burning coals upon his head. This makes him feel like he's in. Not only did that testimony, I hope and pray, have some sort of impact against his feelings about hypocrisy for Christians, but I hope it shamed him into thinking that he's a sinner. How about this evil? Evil has come to take away your personal freedoms. Americans, evil is here to take away your personal freedoms. How do you respond? This was clearly directed at the Romans, who were the occupiers, if they force you to go 1 mile. And by the way, that was the law of the day. Roman soldiers, under any condition, could make any civilian, anybody under occupation, the Jewish people, to carry military equipment, to provide transportation, but they were limited to 1 Roman mile. That was the law. You had to do it. You could be minding your own business, walking down the street, going to a birthday party, going to celebrate somebody's anniversary. They would grab you and say, no, buddy, no, you're staying right here. You got a new job here. You're going to walk a mile from me. How do you think the Jewish people felt about this? Well, they resented it more than anything. By the way, remember the story of Cyril who took up the cross? That was exactly what happened there, this Roman law. It symbolized to them this foreign occupation. It symbolized them that they were forced into helping a pagan military. It went against every fiber of their being. And what they would do at the end of that 1 mile is they would throw down that equipment because they knew they had served that 1 mile law. And now Jesus says this crazy thing. When they come and they ask you to go 1 mile, what are you to do? You're to go 2. Now here's the crazy thing about going 2 miles. And this is why people always use 2 miles as a great illustration for like just going over and above. You see, if somebody forces me to do something, they're in control. I'm under their guide. I'm doing. Now, if they know I'm going to throw it down and I don't, I say, I'm good, let's go another mile. Who's in control now? I'm in control. Love's in control. I took the evil control and I turned it into love control. You see how this works? Now, every step of the way, as I'm walking, I'm saying, hey, how's it going? Well, you don't really have to go an extra. No, it's good. I want to do this. Where are you going? You're in control. Evil's not in control anymore. You took control. You let love take control. You're not under him. He's under you. He's under love. You're doing everything you're doing because of Jesus and his love. And guess what happens then when love takes control? Do you know it's recorded in Roman, when Christianity eventually takes over the whole Roman Empire? It only takes them 275 years, but eventually Christianity becomes the religion of Rome in 313. Do you know what's recorded? That in the 2 centuries prior, in the 2nd and 3rd century, the Roman soldiers were some of the main converts. They'd seen Christianity and they'd seen its love. They'd seen a testimony. And by the way, the greatest testimony we have as Christians is love. Sometimes you hear about Muslims coming to faith. And they'll always say it was the love. It was the love. Our greatest weapon against evil is love. It cannot be defended by any source. The love of God will win. How about this? Evil has come to take away your prerogatives. Now, see, because everything in here is being done by like a form of retaliation. Now, a prerogative is a right or privilege exclusive to a particular individual and class. In other words, the reason why Jesus says, give to the one who begs from you and do not refuse the one who would borrow from you. What it means is that you are in a position of money. You have the money. And now somebody comes and asks you for money. Now, people that have money tend to give money to people they want to give money to. It's their prerogative to give money to people they like, or people they care about, or to groups, or to people or individuals that agree with them. And Jesus is saying, no. Don't use your money or your position or your status to show partiality. You be generous not only to poor, but you be generous to anybody. And the principle Jesus is going to give later, because if you want to be a son of God, the Father who is in heaven makes the sun rise on the evil and on the good. He sends rain to the just and the unjust. In other words, God's not up in heaven going, this is my son, it will only go to the good people. No, there's good given to every group of persons. This, by the way, is where you get to passive-aggressive retaliation. You all know you can retaliate through passive-aggressive behaviors? This is the cold shoulder. You ever wonder where the expression cold shoulder came from? I always thought it was like, okay, it's a nice cold shoulder, I'm going to give it to somebody. Feel this cold shoulder. I actually looked it up. It goes all the way back to Bulgaria, in which you would invite all these people to the table, and if there was somebody you didn't like, everybody would get warm food. Everybody would get it nicely cooked. But let's say this guy here at the end, you didn't care for, he was at your table, you didn't like him, you would give him a cold shoulder of beef. The cold shoulder refers to this cold meal that you would give him to send him a message. You're here, but I don't like you. I'll feed you, but you're not going to like it. You get the cold shoulder of beef. I thought about, that revenge is best served, is like a cold dish or whatever that was. It's not related, but there is a similarity. I know people that do this. Matter of fact, I served under a senior pastor who did this all the time. If you slighted him in the slightest way, and you might not even know you slighted him, well, you did after a while, because he would ignore you. You ever know people like this? give you the cold shoulder of beef? I mean, and it was even worse because he would purposely do this. Like he would come up, like he would greet somebody and go, "Ah, so good to see you. How you doing?" And he would walk right back, like walk right by you, like didn't even see you there. Almost like to emphasize, that's what I do to people I like. Don't ever be a cold shoulder person. Don't ever do that. Don't ever retaliate by not giving a person the love and respect they deserve. As a young minister, he would do this to me all the time. And I remember thinking to myself, and then I went to the other pastor and he says he does it to everybody all the time. It's his way of dealing with slights. Jesus would eventually get to this. If you love those who love you, what reward do you have? No, you love everybody. You love all people. Even the people that slighted you. Even the people that offended you. You treat everybody. Don't give anybody a cold shoulder. This last one is never fear evil because, well, actually, did I go through all of them already? I thought there was one more left. Is that it? Did my dyslexia take over this too? I just went through them so fast I forgot. Yeah, those were the 4. You don't have to fear any evil. You don't have to worry when evil comes to take something from you, whether it's respect or dignity or money or whatever, because evil never wins. Because God will always, and his love will always win. What Jesus is trying to show us here in this is the path of victory, the path of defeating evil every single time. The path that Jesus talks about in Luke, that when we have been fully trained, we will be like our teacher. If he absorbed it, we can absorb it. If he can take insults and persecutions, we can take them. We can turn the other cheek and even allow more. If somebody wants to take away our goods, we can shame them and give them more. We can take control next. All these things are all about the fact that God is on our side.